don't you? They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I'm the man you call Jigsaw. Hello.
It's October, Vince, and what does that mean?
That means it's horror month all month long.
Good, Vince.
Yeah, it is. It's horror month 2016 at Box Office Maniacs.
Bam!
What else do you need? You're back. You came back to watch us do the Saw films.
Yep, 5 now. And I know what you're saying to yourself.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Wow, Saw went to 5 movies? No, it actually went to 7 movies.
But we're only on number 5.
Okay, and 4 and 5 in this series, as I was just telling Vince off camera here, for me were the most confusing out of the whole series. And I don't know, I guess it's because of the flashbacks overlapping other films, and I don't know, they're just really two confusing films.
I agree with you. It was confusing. But the first time I saw this film, I actually watched it on Netflix, and so I'm sure it was the theatrical version of it, whereas this Blu-ray is the unrated director's cut. But watching the theatrical version of this and not having seen any of the other films in quite a while before I watched it, it's even more confusing.
Okay, so Saw 5 actually starts at Saw 3. So this is pretty much a sequel to Saw 3, and Saw 4 took place during Part 3, so it wasn't so much of a sequel as this was. So Part 4 was Part 3, and now Part 5 is the end of Part 3. So you understand all that?
What?
Yeah, so it's actually Saw 4.
Exactly, because it's a sequel to Saw 3.
They kind of did sort of like Fast and Furious did, too, in that regard.
Well, let's not confuse them anymore, Vince. Vin Diesel is not in this movie.
No, he's not. It would have been more interesting that way.
Oh, very funny. Now tell the one that doesn't suck.
Well, okay, so I actually liked Saw 5 quite a lot because, again, Saw 3 was, for me, my favorite out of the whole franchise except for the first one and another one we're going to get to here in a minute. But out of all the other ones, Saw 3 was it. I mean, for the longest time I was like, come on, I mean, it was fantastic. And now to get a direct sequel that's not taking place during it, but after it, is cool, finally.
When I saw it for the first time, I didn't think so. I thought this was terrible. I thought this was worse than the fourth one. I really disliked this movie. I thought it was just terrible.
So, basically, like I said, this is a sequel to Part 3. And the cop at the end of Part 3 is in the beginning of this, and you actually get to see what happens to him. Because if you watch the ending of Part 3, it sort of leaves it off on a cliffhanger. We finally get to find out what happened to that cop.
Yeah, and pretty much this movie is basically, it's all about, really, comes down to that one character that you suspected could be in on the whole Saw thing and the whole Jigsaw thing, but you weren't really sure. Now this one does give it away, and it's all about him.
Yeah, and it's about him and about this cop who's suspecting that it's him, and he's trying to, go through the film trying to prove that this guy is Jigsaw. And out of all the other stories, this one I really, really like a lot. I think they did a great job with the story in this movie.
Yeah, and I actually enjoyed it a lot more now, watching it back to back like this, because I understood it a lot more. Things made more sense. And if I hadn't done that, then I really, at this point, I would have, again, said this is like my least favorite out of the whole Saw series. But I actually like it a lot more than I did now. if that isn't confusing enough.
I think that the problem with these films after Part 3 is they all started sort of copying almost off of Part 3, because now you don't just have like a victim that is, doing crack or whatever, and Jigsaw is trying to save this person's life by putting him into a trap. Now it's all about choices. You get this guy who goes in these rooms, and they have like the prisoners or whatever in there who's done terrible things, and it's sort of like Saw 3. It's your choice to save these people or not to save them. And I think the rest of the series is basically like that now.
Not to give it away or anything, but yeah, that's exactly what it does from this point on. Is it's more about the choices that these people make rather than them separate people trying to do a separate trap at each time.
Yeah, so we don't have that many individuals trying to save themselves. We have a person who's on the outside trying to save somebody who's in a trap.
But all of it goes back to this person that you think could be Jigsaw, and all of it also goes back to Jigsaw himself. So you wouldn't know that unless you, like I said, watch them in sequence. You definitely would get lost in it. And I also have to say this too, Dave, this is where they really got into the whole, as much as you hated to say it the first time, this is where they got into the whole torture porn part of these films, where these movies were competing against like the Hostel films.
It's the differences, of which there are none, that make the sameness exceptional.
So everything was dark and dirty and bloody and gross and disgusting, and as they made more and more gross and disgusting stuff that they could make.
Oh yeah, this is where it really, well, part 3 and 4 was kind of gross. This is where it kind of really turned, and it was straight out gore in this movie, which I don't mind because that's what you're expecting when you go see it. But, you look at this film compared to the first film, it's a totally different thing now.
It's down to your basic horror film. But and a lot of the thinking that you did from the first films really isn't there. Now it's just kind of you're thinking about, okay, where do these characters lie within the Saw story, rather than, okay, it made you think about if you're really in that situation, what would you choose? What would you do? It did less and less of that, and it did more and more of, okay, how does that guy relate to Jigsaw?
It's definitely become much more of a story now rather than putting you in that situation, like what Vince just said. It's more putting some other character into that situation, so you don't feel so much part of, wow, would I be able to do this? It's pretty much watching somebody else do it, and it takes it away a little bit, the fun of the film, but at the same time, like I said, Saw 5, I think, had one of the better stories here, and I really enjoyed it. I really like the cop. I like the interaction between him and trying to, finally go after the Jigsaw person, which they haven't really done in any of these movies.
This FBI agent is actually the one that's trying to figure out who Jigsaw is at this point, and I actually did like his character a lot more in 4 and 5 than I did the main guy. Like we were saying in the last review for Saw 4, we really thought the main character here, this detective, he's just boring and dull, and if it wasn't for the fact that he actually has something to do with the Saw story, you really wouldn't care about this guy.
Oh yeah, they you want to FaceTime?
No.
That's what it says.
No.
Hi, this is Dave Decay. Can I speak with Vince Maniacs?
No.
Vince would like to FaceTime with me.
I'm FaceTiming enough.
You want to FaceTime?
I want to play a game.
Also in part 5, they talked more about Jigsaw, and they talked more about his wife. And his wife was really becoming an interesting character now. So you're thinking to yourself, what sort of role is she going to play in the overall movies now? Because it seems like they're up really big in this.
Is she the one doing it, or is it this other guy? And yeah, they keep that mystery going.
Oh, I think it did. So overall, I really liked Saw 5. I don't think it was spectacular, but it wasn't like a part 1 or a part 3. Much better than part 2, much better than part 4. So I would give Saw 5 a 4 out of 5.
Okay, and like I said, when I first saw this film, I thought it was horrendously bad. I thought it was just terrible. I would have given it a 1 because it was that bad. I really didn't care for it. And like I said, watching it now in succession, watching them back to back like this, it makes a lot more sense to me. I pick up on a lot more. So I can't say it was as bad as I thought it was. So at this point, I would actually give this one a 3 out of 5.
Again, this is a great horror franchise that a lot of people just sort of throw it off on the side. And because of what Vince just said, is that it is confusing. And you have to watch them back to back like this, otherwise you're not going to like them. And a lot of these people who don't like these films like them or don't like them because of that. They don't understand what's happening in the movie.
It's because of part 4, really, is because it got so convoluted and so many characters in it, and then they were trying to straighten it out, it seems, through the rest of the film franchise. And I was a lot more pleased with this than I was originally. I still don't think it was that great of a movie overall, but it was better than I thought it was. So come back.
All right, so Return.
Go ahead.
That was it. That's all I had, Vince.
Just Return?
Return. That's it. That's all I had.
Well, that's what they did in Indiana Jones 4. It didn't work out so well.
But it worked out really well when The Living Dead returned.
Just like The Living Dead, keep returning to Box Office Maniacs and Horror Month, and keep subscribing to us for more Horror Month and more films and more reviews and more stuff and more things that you would normally not want to watch, but you are because you love us.
And we don't care if you're alive or dead. Just come back. And one last thing, Vince, is I have a lot to say about Saw 6, and you don't want to miss out on that.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure you do.